Hey, Zero listeners, it's time to watch 90 Day Fiancé. Let's watch.
Except for make me stronger. But instead, she is kind of looking at it in a negative way. So that really irritates me. Let me tell you one thing. I'm going to be as respectful as I possibly can right now. But you're really kind of getting to me.
Okay, so to catch you up, Hamza's mom wants to talk with Memphis, with the translator. It's the same translator as last time. He is not verbatim translating, but he is interpreting and helping them to communicate. He's softening some things that they're saying, which I don't know if that helps or hinders. I'm guessing it helps. And Memphis was saying that she has been traumatized. She brought up that subject, that she has some issues from her past. The mom has some questions. But anyways, the mom hears that and says, oh, well, so you've been traumatized. Is that going to impact your relationship with Hamza? Because sometimes I see you getting really angry and in situations where it doesn't seem justified. I don't know if that's exactly true. I mean, compared to other cast members on the show, we've seen bigger, more unfair expressions of anger for sure. But anyway, the mom has that question, and it's, I think, triggering Memphis at this point. You know, there's a way of responding to this of just like, yeah, you know, I get it. I do have some trauma and it does affect me negatively, but, you know, I'm working on things and I really try to put things in perspective in the moment. And sometimes it does cause me to be a little unfair, but, you know, I usually recover, which I think is true. Memphis recovers pretty well and she managed to regulate pretty well. But I think sometimes she does get triggered, which makes sense. All of us really have that tendency. Given Memphis's history, she, I think, has more of that, which makes total sense. I mean, really, I don't know if I've said this, that of the people that I've worked with Memphis's background, she's doing extremely well. Not to say that everyone with her background is some sort of train wreck, but if you didn't know, you wouldn't know she had that history. You know, there are people on the show that I imagine would have a history like Memphis, and they don't. Anyway, point is that you know, she's doing really well, not only in life as a nurse, but also emotionally and in terms of her reactivity. You know, she's doing pretty well. Anyway, so the mom is asking about that, and I think that triggers her. I think it makes her feel unsafe. I think it makes her feel attacked and rejected, and she is starting to react defensively. So let's watch.
I'm a nurse practitioner. I came from nothing to where I'm at right now. I haven't had the support that Hamza has had. I had to learn everything on my own.
Totally, and completely agree with Memphis here. I don't think she's doing herself any favor. Usually she recovers, and I'm guessing she will. But, you know, the mom was saying, you've been traumatized, and sometimes I see you get too angry sometimes. What's up with that? And then she has a display of defensiveness and anger. You know, Memphis's response here doesn't, I don't think, really address what the mom is asking. She's asking, you know, are you going to be a bad wife, essentially? Are you going to harm my son? And Memphis is saying, I've been through a lot and I've succeeded in a lot of ways. You know, it's sort of related, but not entirely. But I'm guessing Memphis will eventually regulate. And the mom, I think, will help because she's not particularly reactive. So let's see what happens.
أنا عرفتها قوية خاطر معناها باللي صار لها وداك الشيء اللي تعبته الكل مع حمزة ولدي تعيش.
She was telling that you are a very strong woman, but I know that Hamza will give you a good life.
Okay, good. Yeah, the mom was not taking it personally. The anger, I don't know how you really say it, the intensity that Memphis was expressing, and says, yeah, you're totally strong, and that's great. So I think that'll help Memphis to take a breath and relax.
I'm a very loving person. I really love him. That's why I came here. And I will never bring him to America and let him get hurt.
I'm wondering what's particularly triggering for her in this moment. Is it just the fact that her trauma is a topic which wouldn't be unusual? when I work with people with the sort of traumas that she's been through, we will over time learn the sort of layers of the onion that people have regarding their defenses and their emotions around the traumas that they've been through. I mean, just imagine being essentially relationally traumatized every day from 0 to 18. You would have a lot there, right? It's not just like one instance. There might be some events that you can call upon, but just a lifetime of neglect and lack of attunement and being treated like you're worthless, like you're this throwaway thing, you know. Foster kids sometimes feel that way. And not always, of course, but sometimes they do. And and that's just not even talking about the actual harm that people will, do to children in those situations. But anyway, so I don't know. And so when we went with my clients, what we learn is that sometimes talking about it will cause an emotional reaction because it's getting closer to the center of the onion. And so I don't know if for Memphis in this moment, just the fact that it's in the air right now of just like, I've been traumatized. Another possibility is that she's having some transference to the mom, that the mom is an authority, one, and two, has some ability to ruin her life. You know, if she doesn't get the mom to approve, then she, I think, thinks maybe she won't be able to marry Hamza. And so it could be touching on some traumas from her past around authority, maybe even around her mom, a standoffish authority figure like a foster parent or something, and you know, it's pretty high stakes, and so now on the other hand, what I'll say is that crying and having an emotional reaction is something that's completely normal. It's a intense situation, and tears are completely normal in a situation like that. So even if she didn't have any traumas and I saw this, I'd be like, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty intense thing. And a lot of the cast members, I'm often thinking, why aren't you crying more? Like, this is a pretty crying appropriate situation.
قد كنا نحب وياسر نحب وعلى الآخر، وذيك علاش أنا جيت وذيك علاش أنا نلوج عليه.
حتى هو يحبها، راه حس بما هكا يحكي لي قال لي نحبها برشا.
She tells to his mother that he loves you so much.
Using this as a jumping off point, imagine if Memphis hadn't cried and stayed in the defensive, intense / hostile space, what that would have done to this conversation. The fact that Memphis feels safe enough and mature enough to just cry provokes an empathy response from both the translator and the mom that just ends the conflict. It provokes people to be like, because if you're just getting attacked with intensity and hostility, then, you start defending, you start getting into a negative mind space. You see someone crying. And so I'm guessing that a good percentage of you, if not literally all of you, should be crying, and it would be better for you than to be hostile and defensive and to withdraw. Because often all the communicate, often when we're defensive and we feel attacked, we feel like we have to explain things. We feel like we have to attack back. Well, you and da-da-da. When if you just cry, it exhibits the pain. And the other person, you don't even have to say anything. It's like, oh, and it can just end the conflict right there.
نحب نتهنى.
I mean, think about this conversation. They didn't really, in terms of what was edited, have a conversation about much at all. There were no revelations, there were no questions that were getting below the surface. It was essentially a bit of a scrutiny in the beginning from the mom. Memphis gets defensive, but then immediately feels safe enough to just express, and it's her body, it's not necessarily her conscious mind, but her body feels safe enough to exhibit that pain. The mom feels bad. The mom backs off. I don't think the mom was going to lay into Memphis much anyway. Then the mom starts to cry, and now they're hugging. So when we think about communication, when we think about working out conflicts, crying and hugging and saying nothing is often the solution.
كما راوية كما هي وتترافع.
Rawia, her daughter. So like Rawia, like you, the same, she said.
Yeah, it's really touching. And Memphis has shown just tremendous strength and ability and maturity through a lot of this. When we compare to other cast members, when you think about an Angela or something, or Lisa of Usman, or Mike and Natalie, or I don't know, just these people who have either hostility or very much of a withdrawal or defensive-ness. Memphis, although will have that, which is really quite normal, she has a side of her that can come out. It's not intense. It's not a high degree. I would say on a scale of things, it's like a 3 out of 10. You know, she can come out towards Hamza, towards the mom in a, I think, shooting herself in the foot kind of way, but very quickly she can recover. And a big strength of hers is her ability to just cry. I mean, how many of the fights that she's had with Hamza and now the mom were essentially ended because she just cried?
Thank you. The fact that Hamza's mother and I were able to clear the air and kind of see where each other comes from, it is a big deal.
And think about how many other people on the show, and I guess in life, would have a better start to their relationship if they just got together with the in-laws, one-on-one or with a translator, and bonded. So many times there are, like Natalie and Mike's mom, right? Did they ever really spend time alone? We could imagine Mike's mom not being particularly helpful if they did spend time alone, or did they? Anyway, point is that because often in life and in the show, there's this notion of like, well, I have to get some, I have questions, I need answers, and I have something to say, and I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna see what the response is, and I'm gonna watch the response. And instead of, I just don't know this person very well, and how about we just bond? How about we just like each other? And then I'll see how I feel afterwards. Because so many times, and to translate this to, your own personal lives, is if you're experiencing difficulty with your partner, with, conflict, distance, this sort of thing, not all the time, but some of the times, all you need to do is just have something that you can enjoy together, something that doesn't involve the conflicts. Because I feel like for some couples, they feel like, okay, particularly some people, particularly preoccupied people, it's like, okay, we have a moment alone. We got to talk about the past 10 conflicts. And certainly I'm a proponent of that. But sometimes it's impossible to actually work it out in that way because you have a negative valence about your partner and you don't feel close to them. And you're thinking, well, if we work out those past 10 conflicts, I will feel close. Whereas sometimes if you just put those things aside, you can get to them. That's what I say to a lot of my couples and individuals that I'm working with is there's almost never an emergency to these conflicts, meaning that you don't have to work on it and resolve it immediately. And so say to yourself, look, I'll get to it. That's what I tell people to try to do this as a practice, almost like a mindfulness practice. You're in conflict with your partner. They did something that bothers you. Now, with parenting, it's different because sometimes you got to work. But even that, usually, that's a long-term kind of deal, or medium-term kind of deal. But anyway, point is that in the moment, you say to yourself, this isn't an emergency. I don't have to, you're out to dinner and they say something that kind of triggers you. Oh, there's this compulsion for some people to be like, I got to address that right now. That will not stand. Maybe, but often it's better to just let it go for a bit. You say to yourself, I'll address this later. Actually, this kind of applies to parenting as well. Like you see a kid do something, sometimes, not always, it's better to be like, well, we'll talk about that one later. Anyway, point is that one of the things that could happen is that the next day you are less triggered and less hurt by it. You look back to the thing that happened yesterday and you can see it for what it is. And when you look at it, you're like, well, that wasn't that bad. And honestly, it was probably half or at least half me because I was in a bad mood or I interpreted it wrong in the moment. And then you don't do anything about it. You don't have a conflict about it. It doesn't escalate things in the moment because when we are in the moment, I think an important thing to remember is that we're not seeing things accurately. I have to talk about distortions on, with the various different people on the show. I hope that y'all can admit to yourself that you are often distorted yourself, particularly when you're in a conflict with someone, particularly when you're hurt. It's very normal to see things through that pain and to misinterpret or to blow things up times 10 or 100. And so if we just give it some time, and it sounds like a simplistic thing to say, and it is to some extent, but it's something to add to the repertoire of the, dozen of sort of principles that you follow in terms of conflict resolution. It's just like, do I have to deal with this right now, or can I give it a little bit of time, and then I'll give it a day or two, and I'll look back and see, was that worth it? Now, on the other hand, there are people who are people pleasers and they're doormats and they don't assert themselves at all. So, there's a lot of different aspects to it. But all right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.